This whole month, as we remember and celebrate the Reformation now 500 years ago, we need to be continually reminded us of grace and how it works. Grace comes first. God always comes to us first. God is always taking that first step, reaching out that first hand to us. And that was cemented, solidified, made certain on the cross in Jesus' sacrifice, His death and resurrection. So we've got that part. Today we'll talk a little bit about the now what. See, because if you're always striving to please God or get into God's good graces, as we talked last week, then you'll never be finished. You'll never escape the guilt and frustration and even anger. So today I want to talk to you about a critically important piece of also our Lutheran and Reformation heritage. Talking, of course, about potluck. It's a big part of who we are, right? Now, we have two sacraments, Holy Communion and baptism, which we'll share. Baptism in just a minute, for a little Ezra. Some would say the third sacrament is coffee, and followed up closely behind by potluck. Potlucks are fantastic, because there's this kind of unique invention where everybody, no matter who they are, brings something. Sometimes it's a relatively small group, sometimes it's a relatively large group, but everybody brings something. Somebody brings the casserole with potato chips on top, which is a hit. Somebody brings the Jell-O mold with the fruit cocktail inside. Somebody brings their famous brownies or apple pie. Right? Everybody brings something. And interestingly enough, I think no matter what kind of potluck it is, a church potluck, a Cub Scout potluck, or any kind of organization, it seems like everybody brings something and there's always something left. It's sort of like a loaves and fishes kind of thing. There's always a little bit left over. For years I was terrified of potlucks. Because I always thought, well, either I'm gonna make something and I'm gonna be the second one there. Right? If you're there first with the Jell-O mold, everyone says, awesome. If you're there second, they say, got one. Or the other thing is I was worried about is that I was going to accidentally food poison somebody. Right? Like I'd make it the night before and accidentally leave it out on the counter, and then it got too late and I'd have to go to Sam's Club and get a $4 chicken, and it just wasn't. So I was just scared until I realized the secret of potlucks. Be the first one to volunteer to bring the plates and cups and napkins. I'm that guy. No one ever died from a plate, especially a paper plate. It's a safe choice. But you see, potlucks didn't come from just nowhere. You heard me talk to the children about the community chest. And in 1522, this was something that Luther felt really strongly about. He felt that the church itself and others simply weren't measuring up in the community to taking care of those in need. And they looked very much like that. A lot of locks. Luther believed that, we have an obligation to care for our community. We have an obligation to make sure that things go right. So Luther's idea of the community chest was not simply for those who were hungry or poor or naked, like we heard in our lessons, although that was an important part of it. Again, as you heard me tell the children, the community chest was for the shoemaker who maybe couldn't get leather or had fallen on some kind of tough times because of an illness in the family, and the community chest would contribute to his livelihood. Why? Because people need shoes. Rich or poor, you have a stake in the life of the shoemaker. And lots of other guilds and trades were the same thing. Luther understood, well, he didn't understand, we understand now. You couldn't go to Amazon, pick from 80,000 shoe choices, and just order up some shoes. You had a vested interest, a financial interest, a community interest in making sure that the people who lived around you had a livelihood, had food, had clothes, had all the things that they need so that your community would work. So he happened upon that community chest that you saw. Now, years later, Monopoly, right? The little yellow cards, community chest. That's where it comes from. Because when you turn over a community chest card in Monopoly, something good happens. Right? You don't have to pay $100 rent or go to jail. Something good happens when you end up with the community chest. Today you might have seen a few yellow shirts floating around. First service, this service, and beyond. God's Work Our Hands is a program that's been happening in our national church for a couple of years, and this year Trinity said, let's do it. And that's a good thing. You see, I'm a lucky guy. Some of you might remember that famous Lou Gehrig speech, right? Today. I consider myself the luckiest man in the world. When I come to work every day, just once a week today. I meant daily. When I come to work, I am lucky because I come to a potluck every day. A real potluck. Sometimes Cindy brings really good cupcakes if you ever get a chance. But I come to a potluck every day because every one of our staff has particular gifts, skills, abilities that they bring full force every day to make this community we call Trinity work and happen and serve. But I also know that you do the same. Not just at Trinity. You're here this morning. You could be anywhere else. Anywhere. But you choose, as Isaiah says in the lesson, you choose your ministry, and you choose to be here today. And I'm grateful for that, too. And these folks over here choose to use their musical gifts. Folks up there choose to use their musical gifts. Others choose right now, over there, to use their gifts of teaching. This is a potluck every Sunday. Because you show up and you bring those gifts. But today we're going to have a visible manifestation of what happens every day from Trinity. We're going to go out near and far and serve. We're going to bring the gifts of Trinity outside these walls so people can see them in action. Again, that's why we wore the yellow. So nobody can miss us. That's the opportunity that we have all the time. And what I appreciate about our staff and what I appreciate about all of you is you may have received a letter or so from me that says create at the top. That's why we picked that this year. Because in 2017, we are called to be creative with what we have, creative with what we do. So this is a new thing. We're going to continue doing some things we've been doing. You're going to see in a minute something about the food pantry, which we've been doing. You'll see a video about the endowment trust, which we've been doing. New things we've been doing. God calls us to create just as God is creating in our lives. Last thing. In just a minute, you're going to make some promises. One big promise especially. And that big promise is to help Ezra and his family in baptism grow and recognize his gifts, recognize what he has to bring to the potluck. Right now, it would probably bring formula, mushy peas, something like that. But as he grows, he's going to discover, and we're going to help him discover, what it is that he has to bring to God's great big potluck that we call Trinity. It's a tremendous opportunity. And whether you do that with your time, your talents, your treasure, your testimony, or your very body by being in these pews, you choose. Again, as Isaiah challenged us, you choose. But bring something, because there's always room at Trinity's potluck, because the host is Jesus, and he's got plenty for us, and all he asks is that we share. But before you set your mind as to what you're bringing, I'm bringing plates. Amen.